Mm, mm, mm. Mm, 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 mm. I'm not even going to hold y'all. What we're going to do is look at something that's crazy. How math shows the necessity of hell. Math demonstrates why hell exists and why God is going to send people to hell. Let me briefly tell you why I'm saying this. I was recently watching a video of the smartest man in the world saying that Jesus is coming back soon. He has an IQ of 276. Cool. I think it's dope that the Lord has saved apparently the smartest man in the world. But as I was watching him talk, really realizing he's brilliant, it made me think of something that I've thought about before, but I went a step further. And so I want to show you right now how math shows the necessity of hell and why God is going to send people there. And then I'm going to show you how it applies to the whole world and to you personally. Stay with me. Let's do this together, right? This is a reality. Here we go. I'm going to put this down here. All right. So let me tell you a formula that I used. All right. James says this, that if you've broken one commandment, you've broken them all, right? So I'm attributing what James is saying to 10 to you break one commandment, you've broken them all right? So let's assume that you break one commandment every day, all right? Just one. You only break one commandment every day. James says you've broken them all. So you break 10 commandments, all 10 commandments, just once a day, all right? There are 365 days in a year. So 365 times 10. I know the math. I just want you to, I want you to see it. Okay. Equals 3,650 times at bare minimum that everyone sins in the course of a year. So every person on earth sins 3,650 times. All right. Now, I asked ChatGPT, so I don't know if this is right or not. I asked ChatGPT how many people there are on Earth and what is the average age of the Earth. All right. The average age of everyone combined. So ChatGPT said that there are roughly 8.2 billion people on the Earth and that the average age is 31 years old. All right. So let's take 360, 3650. Everyone sins this amount of times every year. All right. This is the bare minimum. All right. Let's times this now by how many people there are on the age of people on the earth. Right. Times 31. So everyone sins 113,150 of 31 years. Of 31 years old, the total amount of sins of everyone sinning once or sinning once a day is 113,150. Now let's multiply that by how many people are on the earth. All right. 8.2 billion. Let's make sure that's right. 8.200. I think I have an extra zero. Let me go back. Hold on. How do I go back one? Hold on. 8.200. How do I go back one? Let me see. Let's go back to here. All right. This is how let's go back here. Now let's times this by 8.2. I made too many zeros. All right. All right. One, two, three. One, two, three. All right. Let's see what the number is. So this is 113,150 sins committed over the average age of 31 times 8.2 billion people who are that age apparently. Everyone's not 31, but it's an average age of 31 years old. And here's the result. 9.2783e plus 14. All right. Let me tell you what that number equals to. So that number is essentially 927.83 trillion, right? It's a scientific trillion sins committed every year against God by the whole world with an average age of 31 years old, right? That's 9.278. So 927.83 trillion sins, almost a quadrillion sins against God, all right? Against God annually. Keep in mind, this is the bare minimum because no one sins once a day at all. And again, I said you sin one time a day, all right? James says you broke all commandments. So we're saying 10 times a day, 365 days in a year. That's 3,650 times that everyone sins, right? You multiply that by the average age, which leaves you to 113. Then you multiply that by how many people there are. And this is what you get. And this is the bare minimum. No one sins one time a day. This is the minimum, right? So God is tolerating at bare minimum 927 8.3 trillion sins against him at bare minimum every year from people who live on the earth. At bare minimum. At bare minimum. You will not. Remember when Peter said, Lord, remember this? Remember when Peter said, Lord, how many times do I forgive someone? 7. And Jesus said 70 times 7. He wasn't saying 490, right? He was saying, don't count them. You just forgive. At bare minimum, this is how much sin God's forgiving. Now, if you want to know how much sin you do, apply the same principle. Take one sin a day. Again, the James principle, you've broken all commandments. So you sin 10 times a day because of one sin, times how many days in a year? 3650, 365. Multiply that by your age, however old you are. All right? So let's try this. Let's do this. All right? So 360 times, if you're 30 years old, now let's just go here, equals. I'm an idiot. Here we go. If you're 30 years old, at bare minimum, you sin 109,500 times. This is the least amount of sins you do in a year against the Lord, right? If you're 40 years old, you sin at bare minimum, because you don't sin just once a day, times 10, 146,000 a year. Bare minimum. If you're 50, 50, let's go to this times 3650. If you're 50, at bare minimum, you've sinned 182,500 times against the Lord. At bare minimum. Think about all of that sin against the Lord that he forgives, that he loves, and he loves those who say, please forgive me. Now, here's the craziest part. Let's go here to end this. Here's the craziest part of all of this. Revelation 5 tells us this. Then I saw in the right hand of him who was seated on the throne a scroll written, and on the back sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who was worthy to open the scroll and break its seals. And no one in heaven or on earth, was able to open the scroll or look into it. And I began to weep loudly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look into it. And one of the elders said to me, "Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered so that he can open the scroll and its seven seals." And between the throne and the four living creatures among the elders, I saw a lamb standing as though it had been slain, with seven horns and with seven eyes, which are the seven spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who was seated on the throne. And when he had taken the scroll, the four living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, "Worthy are you to take the scrolls and to open its seals. For you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on earth." All right. Think about that for a second. So Jesus's blood was so significant, right, that it could forgive the lowest common denominator that we see, that everyone in the world sins against the Lord. The lowest is 927,830,000,000,000 times a year. That's the lowest. That Jesus's blood could forgive all of that sin. And if you take into account, if you use the math strategy to look at your sin just alone, just your sin, 3650 times your age. That's how much sin, and that's the bare minimum. That's how much sin you've been forgiven. That's how powerful the blood of Jesus Christ is. But all of that sin against God cannot just go unpunished. There's no way. This is the reason why hell exists, because all of that sin against God, we don't even think in those categories. This is what he experiences. Exodus 7:11 said, God, the judge, is a righteous judge. It says he's a righteous judge and feels indignation every day. Why? Because he sinned against trillions, quadrillion, a number that we can't even imagine. Math shows the necessity of hell. But what do I know? I'm in a hotel room on a retreat, bugging out off of this reality.